Got it.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's Doug from AR.Watch, and we're here with Warrior today, and we are talking about AR101 Expedition Alaska. This is an exciting one. It's going to be the Adventure One World Cup final, and there's going to be, this is the first time in a long time that a race has been up there. But first, before we start talking about anything and introduce everybody, we're going to kick it to Jeff for everything Warrior right now. What's going on, Jeff?
Everything Warrior. Well, we are leaving for Omar, the second annual Omar. We leave for that tomorrow to go get that set up. That's Saturday. Last year we had 39 teams. This year we have 62 teams. So I'm glad to see that's growing because it's just an awesome place to have an adventure race, all contained within one state park. Some of the best mountain bike trails in the Southeast. I would say it's the best in Alabama for sure. It's got a mix of all kinds of different things. So we're glad to see that race is growing and see all the teams that are coming out for that. We actually have some new teams that signed up yesterday, 4 of them that I've never seen before. So I don't know if it has to do with Arthur, the King movie that got released, but we'll see. We'll have to ask them when they get there, how did they hear about adventure racing and why did they sign up so late? And then, of course, after that, we go straight to Chattanooga, Tennessee for the Chattanooga Epic, 30-hour and 10-hour options there. Jim Farmer and his wife, Susie, have designed an amazing course. I approved it a couple of months ago. I thought it was really challenging for the 30-hour teams, pretty straightforward for the 10-hour teams. Great paddle that's not ever been used. Obviously, everybody thinks, oh, I'm just going to paddle down the Tennessee River in Chattanooga. Now, Jim's thrown a curveball at you. You're going to be paddling somewhere different, which is going to be kind of unique for this type of race. Chattanooga is just such a cool place to visit. Got so many great restaurants, night bars, and breweries that support the downtown area where the race is going to be starting. And then there's all kinds of things like the Children's Museum there, the aquarium for the family that's coming into town that is supporting their racer. And then we take about 3 weeks off. Seems like a long time, but it's 3 weeks off until the Blue Ridge Adventure Race. It's the 28th annual Blue Ridge Adventure Race, probably the longest consecutive adventure race in America for sure, at 28 years without missing a year. We almost missed 2020, but we were able to pull it off on private property, which was awesome. So again, that's just an amazing location. That race is now a 12-hour race. We have dabbled around with 8, 12, 24, throwing it around, but we want to take you a little bit further out of town. And so we decided to add an extra 2 hours onto it and make it a 12. And then right after that, we have, of course, the new format of the hogback race in Tennessee, where we have rented out the entire YMCA for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're going to hold 2 races. One on Saturday, one on Sunday. You can race either one, or you can race both. It's up to you. So you can come in Friday night, race Saturday, spend the night, get up the next morning on Sunday and race another race on there. So it's a 10-hour on Saturday, 8 on Sunday. You can combine them 2 to make an 18. We just opened up registration because we just got our final approval last week for Expedition Colorado. That will be in September. And that is a 36-hour option as well as a 10-hour option. We opened up registration yesterday. We got 10 teams already. We have some solo spots available for the Puffy Jackets. We still have team spots available for the Puffy Jackets as well. So it'll be 10 solos get a Puffy, 10 teams get a Puffy. So that is, again, we're really excited about being able to come back to Colorado. We could not get the August date. There was too many events going on in Colorado at that time. So we were able to push it, though, to September. You're going to be right at the beginning of the fall season. So the aspen trees are going to look awesome. Temperature's going to be a little bit cooler than the August temperatures. So I'm really thrilled about that and looking forward to, obviously, all the other races that we're adding towards the end of the year. We just had the Conquer race. And if you haven't seen the video on Hunter's YouTube page. You need to go look at it. It's got 50,000 views already in 5 days. It's an amazing video produced by Obstacle Course Racing Media. They did such a phenomenal job on that. Hunter did a lot of the videography on it. It's just an inspiring and unique type of race. You should go see that. So go over to Hunter's page and check it out. And that's it for me. Let's dive into, obviously, what we're going to be doing in July, which is Expedition Alaska.
Yeah, so we've got some new faces and some familiar faces. So why don't we go around the horn and we'll introduce everybody. So Tom, tell us who you are and why you're here talking about Expedition Alaska.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of adventure racing actually, and one of the best races I've done is Expedition Alaska, and that was some years ago now. I want to say about
2015.
2015, yeah. Okay. Oh, geez. Okay, so a couple of years got away from me. We've done
just
other
9
things
years now. Yeah.
Yes, we've done other things like Fiji and so on, but yes, Expedition Alaska was just an amazing race. We had been places, we swore that we had been places that no other human set foot. And of course, another team said that and they found a tennis shoe out there in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know where that came from. Just when man started walking upright, I think is what happened. And but yeah, it was the course design was incredible. You know, we did things like pack rafting down rivers that were very treacherous and thought we would die a couple times. We also did trekking out in the middle of nowhere where, again, we swore there was nobody, and also went through alder, I guess, that was just relentless, and it just hated us. I mean, every step.
Tom, you're really selling this. I'm just telling you. Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it was amazing. And then we started. Oh, actually, we ended up in Hope, Alaska, and we had dinner. We decided to stop for dinner. Okay, I have to put that out there. Had the best clam chowder ever, and then we got on our bikes into the middle of the night and rode on the Resurrection Trail. One of our Resurrection Trail is one must do in your lifetime if you're a mountain biker and or runner or whatever the case is. So one of the guys on our team, he was from Florida, not very familiar with bears, but I'm seeing bear scat along the way. And we stopped for some reason. I grabbed the bear spray and stuck it right here. And he kept saying, "Oh, I'm just tired. I just want to stop." And I go, "It's not going to happen.
This is not the place, right?"
No. So we made it awesome. Anyway.
So you did it in 2015. All 5 of you did it the last time that it was in 2015, or Hunter, did you not?
No, Hunter was like 12. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot that was 9 years ago. So it's hard. So Jenny, you did it in 2015. Tell everybody who you are and tell us a little bit about why you're here to talk about it.
I have been an adventure racer for about 12 years. I'm recovering from an injury right now, so I'm currently on a little bit of an injury hiatus, but I also did Expedition Alaska, and it is probably, in terms of the race course, my favorite course I've ever done. Some of the experiences were maybe not my favorites, but the course itself was phenomenal. I also have done, I've probably done, I don't know, a dozen or so expedition length, 3 days or longer races and all sorts of different terrain. And so I have a lot of experience on the expedition length. And I have never been an endurance athlete prior to this. So just as a disclaimer, like, I was just a regular old sprint strength athlete until I got kind of wrangled into adventure racing and became an endurance athlete very begrudgingly. So even us people that are maybe not born with the best endurance genes, you can still be a very good adventure racer.
Well, that's what I love about adventure racing, right? Like you can be anything, any age, any size. It doesn't matter. Like, it's all about heart. Hunter, we talk about heart all the time, right? And how, like, these endurance events are all about that. And so we'll get to you in a second, but Ron, everybody knows Ron. first, I need to know, Ron, are you going to do the race?
I'm doing the race.
Are you
Yes.
going to have the Ron-tourage, or is it going to be like a competitive team?
Well, that'll remain to be seen. We're putting together a competitive team this year. I did the last one, and Julie Arduin and I put together 2 teams of newbies. And if you want to talk about an experience, I've led teams of newbies. I led teams of newbies in the last C2C, which is always an interesting experience. Leading a team of first-time racers through Alaska in this course, and I think we'll get to hear about this the last course, was an incredible, and one of them was 14. We had a 14-year-old on one of the newbie teams.
Yeah, but he was 6'8" and 300 pounds, 200 pounds, wasn't he? He's like
He was
linebacker.
a football quarterback.
So what
And
you're
he
saying is
actually
Hunter was
he
slacking
turned
when
out
he
to
was
be our
12.
mule.
And then Hunter, like, I don't think you need an introduction on here, but we're glad to have you on here. Tell us, like, why you're excited about Expedition Alaska.
Yeah, the saddest thing is I can't race it this year because I've been helping design the course and kind of race directing it when it comes and everything. But it is cool to see it from this point of view because I get to see all the crazy stuff you guys have to do. And it's like, I'm sure my dad would talk about this, but hearing all the stories from 9 years ago when it last happened, so many epic stories. Like people, I don't think anybody like hated that race. They loved it, but they're like, oh, we almost died a few times. Let's just glaze over that. So we're like, how do we bring the race back and actually avoid all the death parts and just keep all the epic parts? So that's what I've been kind of like, hey, maybe we don't go over this glacier for 50 miles with ice climbing and carrying a pack raft and portaging a canoe and stuff. I'm like, maybe that's too epic. So I'm excited about the course design. I think they did a great job, David Atlar and Tom and Ginny and Dad and everything.
So the last time that it was there, was this the one that was recorded that was on Amazon Prime that you can go and watch, where I think Jason Magnus like almost died on the water slide?
Yes.
For those of you at home that are trying to see what this race is about, go on Amazon Prime and watch it, because I watched it back when I first got started in this after watching Eco Challenge. I was like, oh, let me find everything I could find. And I found this one. And I was like, never going to Alaska. So first of all, I'm not a cold person. So, and second of all, I like to live. But it's good to know that you're going to be walking the line of keeping it epic, but also making sure that everybody is completely safe.
Because that's what I've always said. It's like, you're going to Alaska. You don't have to do too much to make it epic. Just being in Alaska is epic enough.
Yeah.
You don't need to go try to kill yourself out there to have the amazing stories. We could put you on incredible trails and biking and everything that we're making an epic story and everything. You don't have to sacrifice your life.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I
Jeff,
mean,
I know
Hunter-
we've seen a lot of the photos from the scouting trip that you guys did several months ago, right? And they were absolutely gorgeous. Jeff, tell me a little bit about the course and kind of what has gone into the planning for this.
Well, I think that, I mean, David Adlar and I have been talking since probably 2000, when like Eco Challenge came back. Tom and Jenny and Hunter were the team for Eco Challenge. If you don't recognize them by now, Tom's aged a little bit. He looks a little different, but that's our Eco Challenge team. So when you spend 11 days in Fiji, you're like, what are we going to do next? Like, what's the next thing? We should get David Adlar to bring back Alaska. And so I had talked to David Atlar about it, but then of course COVID hit in 2020 and it kind of went on the back burner. Dave and I, lost contact with it. And then I started, pulling his strings again. And we came to an agreement. I mean, designing an epic race in Alaska is very, very difficult. I mean, there's just so much, there's not a lot of trails. I mean, if the Hunter and I show that we were on, we never stepped foot on single trail. Every single trail that you saw that was on the show was a bear trail. Trails were made by them. We never stepped foot on a road. We never stepped foot over on train tracks. Nothing is out there. So it's true wilderness. So David's challenge in the beginning was to have this epic race over all this terrain. The problem is there's no connecting trails. There's not a lot of that. There's been a lot of new trails that have been added in Alaska. I wanted to, really assure David that if I was going to bring this back, if I was going to put it on, I didn't want it to be a soft race, what I consider like the C to C, pretty straightforward, navigation's easy. I still wanted the challenges of Alaska, but I really wanted to keep things safe for not only for the racers themselves, but also staff and the rescue crews that he would have to even have a rescue out there. So we condensed the race down into using some of the best parts from the first year. And then he also had designed a second year race, and we kind of overlapped those and then made it adjustable so that it's conducive to what we normally think of when we think of a warrior race, is that I don't have to go get that checkpoint. If I don't feel comfortable about getting it, I don't have to get it. It's not mandatory. Back in 2015, everything was mandatory. Well, this is not mandatory. This is all optional. If you don't feel comfortable at any time in Alaska, you don't have to go for those checkpoints, and you don't have to go up over a glacier. You don't have to crawl through, go over a river that's swollen. You don't have to do it. Ron didn't even bother in 2015. He's like, I don't want to go over that river. I'm going to go around. And he went around without a single checkpoint. But we've made it to where, again, we got some low-hanging fruit, and then we've got some what we consider pro points that would really take experience to go get. So I think that the design has been perfectly executed by David and I, and we're going to have an epic race.
And so I know, Jenny, you talked a little bit about how you loved the race and hated the race at times. So tell people kind of what they can expect going into an Expedition Alaska, and like how you prepare yourself mentally for something like that.
Well, you just basically have to start out with an attitude that you can do it and that you will finish it. And if everybody on your team has that same idea, then you have basically all the tools that you need to actually finish it. If there are people that sometimes go and do these races that are like, well, I don't know if I can do it. Maybe I'll just do, if I make it halfway, I'll be happy. And I would stay away from those people. You want to be with people that believe in themselves and believe in the ability of their team to actually finish, because it's very possible for really anybody. And so you need to start with that mental state of, I can do this, and with my team, we can do it together. So that's the first thing. As far as preparing physically, just going out and doing what you do for any other expedition race, but make sure that you do it when you're cold and wet.
Yeah.
Like for a long time. I mean, there were parts of that race where we actually just wore our dry suits trekking, because that was the best way to stay warm and reasonably dry and avoid the Devil's Club.
Yeah, and if you never practice that, right? Because you're
Right.
somewhere where it's warmer, like this race is in July.
Mhm.
So here in Northern Virginia, you're not going to be able to go out in a dry suit and go hike up a mountain, because you will die of like just sweating so much in that thing. But you need to prepare for those things. And Ron, maybe you can tell us, how do you outrun a bear? Because I think that's the question that if you saw the post for today, like I made sure that the checkpoint showed what it's going to look like out there with there could be bears. So did you guys see bears last time?
Oh, yes.
And
Lots of bears.
yeah.
So yeah, if we're in the areas that we are planning on, that we're near where we went through last year, especially, the nice thing is the bears that are close to you are probably going to be going the other direction if you're making noise. You don't want to startle them. But when we're on these large, and Alaska is very open, and you're on a large ridge line, and you can see a mile to the other ridge line, you're like, there's a bear, there's a moose, there's a bear, there's a moose, there's a, they were very apparent that there were quite a lot of wildlife.
Well, actually, moose are probably more dangerous than the bears, I think, right? From all of my friends, I have a couple of friends. I used to have an athlete that I coached that was in Alaska, and they were saying that the moose can be more aggressive than the bears.
We tried to avoid basically anything bigger than us. Marmots we didn't worry about. Those were okay.
Yeah.
I think bears are like alligators in Florida. I mean, there's plenty of food for them to eat. They're not really that interested in attacking a person to try to eat them. They just pretty much ignore you unless you, I mean, Jenny and Tom would verify that we've had a lot of encounters where the whole thing about bears is if you're around water, you need to be as loud as possible because they can't hear you, and you don't want to startle a bear. That's all. If you don't startle them, most of them, that they see you, smell you, they know you're there, they leave the area. They don't want to deal with you. But you just don't ever want to startle them. But adventure racers, that's the reason why you have to race as 4. They won't allow our permit unless you have 4 people. And that's the reason why you have 4 people, because you're noisy as hell. When Hunter and I were on the show, that we were 5 people. There was Hunter and myself, the filming guy, the video guy, the safety guy, and then the support crew. So that was 5 of us moving through the woods. You're pretty loud. And that's the key about bears.
And that's something to touch on that we're going to be talking about before the pre-race meeting and everything during the training, is have a whole bear protocol of like kind of teaching you guys the basics of how to be safe around bears. Because in Alaska, the TV show we did, it was like 3 hours they sat us down and broke down every little detail about the bears, because we were moving in the middle of nowhere coming across these bears. But luckily for 40 days, we never saw a single bear until like the last day of the race. So it's like, yes, there's a lot out there, but if you do the right things, you're not going to come encounter with them. And again, they're not actively trying to hunt you down or kill you. What most bear attacks, especially in Alaska and these big grizzlies, is when you surprise them. You like pop out of the bushes to a creek and there's just a bear and its cubs right there. Then they're scared and they attack you. They're never going to be like, see you off in the distance and like come towards
Chase
you
after
and like
you,
hunt
yeah.
you down when you're running away. You don't run away. But again, I think we'll do a good job before the race telling everybody what the bear safety protocols are. Are you requiring a bear spray for every team?
Yes.
Too? Okay. Bear spray, you're good. But
and that-
yeah, don't be too afraid of the bears, I would say.
That kind of brings me to a question that's posted in the comments by Vicious Cycle Brewing Company. They said if someone does drop from the race, because you just mentioned 4 people and for safety, can the rest finish? Like, can you go unofficial? Or is that going to be mandatory for this race that you stay with 4 or you can't keep going?
It'll be on a to be determined basis during the race, but we've designed the course to where the most extremes is at the end of the race. So they may not be able to do certain sections of the race if they're down to 3. But they would be able to, again, do those option points that I talked about. They'll still be able to do the entire race. They won't be able to go. It's really safe to say they're not going to go over to Glacier. So, and that's at the end of the race. So you're not going to be able to do that portion of the race with 3 people. Now, if there's 2 people that drop from one team and 2 people that drop from another, they want to combine and make it another 4. That will be determined at the time. And it's, again, based on skill level and everything that we feel at that point when to determine. Because, I mean, we could have a whiteout, we could have snow, we could have wind, we could have rain, we could have all kinds of things. So that's going to be determined at the race.
And so there's another question. Dennis Race in the comments said, is there actual ice climbing or just glacier travel this time around?
No, there's just glacier travel. There's no ice climbing in this year's race.
Okay.
The permit got denied. So
okay. And then our friend Chip, well, he probably wants to know, like, if he comes in within the last 30 seconds of the allotted time, if he gets a bonus point for it, since he likes to push it. But he said, can you clarify the climbing certification requirement and what will be covered in the training you're providing prior to the race?
Okay, so basic rope knowledge is what you're going to need to know, and we're going to have a training session before the race starts on glacier safety. So David Atlar will do a safety explanation there on how to rope in and so forth. You just need to know the basics of ropes, how to tie knots, how to pull somebody out, how to use your harness and so forth. So we're going to test those skills. It's not really a certification. You just need to have knowledge of that. And if you fail to prove that you're able to do that, you won't be able to do certain sections of the course. Definitely the wilderness training is definitely a must. We do need a certification for the wilderness training because that is something that the Forest Service is requiring for the permit.
And that's something that every team member has to have, correct? Not just one person?
It's in their instructions, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tom, tell me about like your favorite thing of last race that, I mean, you talked a little bit about some of the sections, but what do people have to look forward to?
Lack of sleep. They have to look forward to that, right? And in managing sleep is an important thing. Jenny proved that she could actually ride a bike and sleep at the same time. So we're going down the Resurrection Trail, and there were certain parts where it was kind of washed a little bit. So there were berms on each side of the trail, and it was no wider than say a big truck tire or whatever. And so we're riding down, and she was riding by braille, hitting both sides. And every once in a while, I'd have to yell her name just to try to wake her up a little bit. And so, yeah. So I would say the Resurrection Trail is one of my favorite sections. Of course, the glacier was just unbelievable. We crossed that at night, and it just happened to be a full moon. I don't know if it's going to be the same timing this year, but yeah, with walking in the middle of an ice field with a full moon in the middle of the night was an incredible experience as well. And yeah,
The middle of the night is only 4 hours. So
well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it seemed longer for some reason, and maybe
Everything seems longer in a multi-day race, right?
it's not really dark there. So
And so Ron, you've taken newbies, you've experienced all kinds of races. What's something unique about Expedition Alaska that teams can look forward to and prepare for?
Well, okay. First, Alaska, some of the places in Alaska that you'll go regardless, you'll be there and you'll just go, holy shit. This is amazing. I mean, there was just places and that happened a lot. It was like just once. It was over and over again. We'd be these places. We'd be on this big scree field, not the one up in Seward, but there were a bunch of them along the way with this big canyon, and you could see. Wow, it was just incredible. There was that, and then the rivers, which were unique. They're different. They're these big, wide, flat plains with flying water that's relatively shallow, but it's moving. And
So don't forget to look around and enjoy where you're at, right?
Really do.
you can't
I
avoid
think
it.
in races, you get so hyper focused on, I'm looking down at the map, I'm trying to figure out where to go, where's the next turn, what to do, that sometimes we forget to stop and look at this beautiful scenery that maybe, especially in Alaska, people might not have even been in that location before, other than these guys scouting the race. So that's a good reminder for people to, take the time to enjoy this too, because it's gonna be, I mean, look, nobody's been racing there for 9 years. So you're gonna get to experience something that people have not had that opportunity. So Hunter, you've been kind of in the planning for this and like looking for these things. What are some things that people have to look forward to? Without giving away too much, I know.
Yeah, I think there's just so much, like everybody's been saying, it's just being in Alaska is just epic enough. You don't have to go climb Denali for the amazing views and everything. You could go literally just drive through Anchorage and see some amazing things. And I think the course design that David and everybody's come up with is just amazing. Like you hit a lot of the highlight points from the previous year, again, without so much of the death part. So you hit all these highlights. And again, like Ron said, is like Alaska is just so insane. Like I grew up going to Colorado all the time. And my friend Courtney, Ashley, I remember her saying, yeah, Alaska is basically Colorado on steroids. I'm like, oh, what's that mean? And when I went out there, I'm like, yeah, this is like Colorado on steroids. Like you got the big mountains, but you got these cool glaciers cracking and melting on the rivers and everything. I think the scouting trip we went out was so much fun with Tom and Jenny. Even though it was raining for the 5 days we were out there, it was still so much fun. Just like getting to one checkpoint and setting just one checkpoint up this valley. The videos, I have them on my Instagram, but like insane, like how beautiful the glaciers are and everything. I think you're, like Ron said, you're going to see multiple points where you like look around like, what the heck? This is just amazing. And that's what excites me about the race, where like other races, yeah, there's some epic things to see, but Alaska, I feel like every single checkpoint is just going to be so epic.
Yeah.
Well, and Jeff, with this being Adventure One's World Cup final, what does that mean for racers too? Because I mean, this should bring some heavyweights, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking really after David and I had a lot of discussions about this course. It is definitely going to be challenging for the top 5 teams, but we think it's clearable. And we think that it is challenging enough for the top 5, and then the middle of the pack and the back of the pack can really appreciate, like Hunter said, every single checkpoint you go to. We have created a design that is going to give you so many different options. The first year, you had to have a pack raft and you had to go up over that and you had to get into the river and you had to go down the river. This is designed where you have a pack raft, you can use it, or you could trek around the lake to the glacier. You got to go up over the glacier to another lake. You can use the pack raft again, or you could hike the trail, or you could bushwhack around. There are so many different options, and that's what I think is going to be really the high point for all these top teams coming, is that what's the best strategy to spend the time to inflate, paddle, get out, get back in, bushwhack, just run the trail. The trail will be longer, but there's all these strategies where I think that that's what's so unique about Alaska, is that there are all these options because it's wide open. It's up to you. So we're excited to see how this is going to roll out, especially with top teams coming from New Zealand and Australia. So we're kind of Rob won it. I believe Rob was on. Yeah, Rob won it. So he's put a team together to come back again. So we'll see how that pans out.
Well, I love that from an AR.watch perspective, because, I want to be able to cover all of those unique route choices and see how that plays out during the race. And something that he just brought up, Jenny, was the bushwhacking. So I know you mentioned something about the Alaskan stickers.
Devil's Club.
Tell me about bushwhacking in Alaska and how it's different from anywhere else.
Well, first of all, I mentioned it's been 9 years since someone raced there. So if you happen to see a nice, bright, shiny, brand new bike helmet out there in the bushwhack, that would be mine. I had to borrow one from Mary Chandler during the race because mine ended up somewhere. I'm sure a bear's wearing it. There were times where we were bushwhacking and we were literally hanging by all 4 limbs, hanging on to Devil's Club and rotted trees, and our feet were on slippery moss, and you're hanging there, and maybe the rock is only 15 feet tall or something, but you got to get up and over it. So you're like, okay, this is interesting, and you kind of, so it's not just like straight through the woods bushwhacking like you might find somewhere else. You will get to places that are impassable because of the Devil's Club, and Devil's Club, if you've never seen it, is this nasty barbed large bushy thing, and especially when you're like sleep deprived or it's nighttime and you just kind of reach up to grab something and you'll wake up really quick. So leather gloves would be really good. I wore leather gloves the whole time, and that was good. So really thick bushwhack, very easy in some of it to get completely turned around. There was at least one point where, you almost got claustrophobic. It was so closed in. But yeah, it's unique to other bushwhacking that I've been in.
Yeah, it gives you a new definition of bushwhacking. Like, I remember talking to Tom and Ginny before we did the Alaska TV show, and they're like, "Oh, the bushwhacking is insane." I'm like, okay. I've done a lot of bushwhacking in my life before. Nothing compares to Alaska. Like, even Fiji was so easy compared to the stuff we dealt with in Alaska, with the Devil's Club, the salmonberry bushes that do not move no matter how hard you push it. And during the show, yeah, we bushwhacked for hundreds of miles. Hopefully you guys don't have hundreds of miles of bushwhacking in this race, but you will get a taste of some of that thick bushwhacking, the Devil's Club and everything. And Tom and Ginny gave us so much great advice about gear wise, about like wearing leather gloves. Yeah. And that was another thing. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to carry these leather gloves the whole time. But oh my gosh, they were like the best piece of gear out there, because the Devil's Club, when you grab onto it, anything else, it punctures your hand, and now your hand's all stinging and everything. So leather gloves is the only thing. And even with the leather gloves, if you grabbed it, it would still puncture the glove. But at least you could like push out of the way. So I think just have a strategy with the bushwhacking too, not have super flimsy clothes that could get ripped up. And yeah.
Yeah, because I think in a lot of other places, in a lot of races, we're used to having trails intermingled, but here, like what you guys have been saying is you're going to find animal, trails and hope that they lead somewhere where you want to go, or you're going to be pushing through. So let's talk about gear, because being in Alaska, obviously the weather could be anything, right? Like you guys were there for the scouting and it rained the entire time. Was it also cold during that time?
Yeah, ish. It was somewhat cold and wet, but I think no matter when you go in Alaska, it's just expect it to be raining and wet. And even if it's not raining, all the creeks, all the glaciers, everything's wet in itself. So I think having a good gear plan of how to stay warm and not get hypothermic out there, even if it's beautiful 70-degree weather. I think what Jenny was talking about is like some sections, she just wore a dry suit the whole time for the trekking to keep her warm and protected from the bushwhacking Devil's Club and stuff. And I think that's a great strategy of figure out what clothes you can wear that you could still move, but stay dry. And because I know there is a pack rafting section in this race and a lot of water hopping in and out and trekking and paddling and all this really cool stuff. And I think just having a strategy of how to stay dry in the boat, but still be able to trek without this really rigid dry suit, whatever.
Yes,
I
it
don't know.
sounds
Yeah.
to me like you don't want to go in with a one size too small dry suit that you borrowed from someone, that you want to make sure that you can move around in it. And at least Chip just asked, for those teams that are going and buying dry suits for the race, what kind of dry suit do you recommend? Do you recommend like a thin, light one, or one that you might need thicker for a little more warmth? Like,
It all depends. I mean, thick, I don't believe in. That's just too heavy. Something that's in the middle of the road would probably be good. And again, it's up to you. I mean, Jenny, the reason why she's cold, she weighs 90 freaking pounds and she has no body fat. I have no problem in Alaska.
I would
love
probably have no
Alaska.
problem either.
I loved it. I wasn't cold hardly at all, except when I took a bath. But it's just all about just be prepared for that. You're going to get a taste of each leg along the way and you'd be like, wow, next leg, I'm going to have this, you're going to get a taste of it. And the weather could be anything. The lows can be down in the 40s at night, which is considered night. But the days could be warm too. Our first day in Alaska was the highest on record. But it was only like 80, but that seems like, well, that's nothing, Jeff. It was hot, so you just have to be, I think that gear list that we're just talking about has so much about safety. Alaska, you need to be safe, period. You need to race as hard as you can. You got to keep moving. But if anything happens, you need to stop. And it's all about safety first. And the race is secondary.
Yeah. And I'm curious what Tom and Jenny think about the gear and what they used 9 years ago. But from my point of view, I would say like, I personally wouldn't trek and bike with a dry suit or wetsuit and stuff. I think it's too rigid. If I have a good rain jacket and good layering system, I'll be good. But I think for the pack rafting sections, paddle section, I would recommend at least having a neoprene NRS. Top wetsuit, not the full thing that you get in, just the top skin tight that I wear underneath my rain jacket and stuff like that. And then maybe have the pants, just have the two different sections. If you have this full-on wetsuit and then you get hot, you can't really take it off easily. And then you got to carry this 10, 15-pound wetsuit around. I know on Fiji, we did the same thing. We just had the tops for Eco Challenge. And that saved us during the river swim. Because if we didn't have that, we would definitely freeze and drop out of the race. So I think having that would be plenty. But what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think you need to wear a dry suit. That water is so cold, and if you should flip over and for example at night, whatever the case is, you'll quickly develop hypothermia. So if you're going to be in the water, you should have a dry suit on.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind on that one. Also, as far as boots or shoes, whatever you're going to wear, don't wear Gore-Tex. Don't wear something that's going to retain water, because you will be in the water and it will be over whatever you're wearing. So make sure it can flow out. Water can flow out of there. Dry suit is a must. But as far as like a real heavy duty one, I don't think you need that. I think you just need one that's going to keep you dry, and just moving will keep you warm enough. When
So
we
the full
did the
body
class,
dry suit, correct? The full body all the way down.
The
to
onesie,
booties?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, the
the
onesie,
gloves?
yes. And I used the NRS is what I had. And that was plenty. I will say this, even with that on, we did the class 5 water rapids that we did. Part of that was we had to jump out with a mile float down the river. And by the time you got out of there, I mean, we were all standing on the shore just shivering. And shivering uncontrollably. So, I mean, it was, a mile in a dry suit is about as much as you can do in one of those glacial rivers.
And
So,
it's perfect. I totally thinking back to our TV show, every single paddle section, we had a dry suit, even though it was like mostly lake paddling and not like probably the warmest time of the year. We still had dry suits and we were still somewhat cold in there. So yes, I totally agree. Getting a dry suit is crucial.
And one other
would-
part, one other point I want to make real quick, not so much about gear, but about the glacial lakes. When depending on the year the map was made that you have, what we found is we ended up bushwhacking where we should have been in water. According to the map, we were in water, but we had to walk maybe another, I don't know, half mile bushwhacking through this stuff, and finally like gave up in the middle of the night looking for the water and set up our tent. And I got up in the morning to go take a pee. And we're like literally like a stone's throw away from the water. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So anyway, we broke out and we were on the shore. So what I'm saying by that is the earth rises, right, as the glaciers go away. And all of a sudden now this water goes away. And you may not be reading exactly where you're standing, but you're standing in water according to your map where you're not.
Jeff, are you
guess it's a
expecting
spoiler.
any floats this year during the race? Like one mile floats down the river?
No, you will not experience
Not
that. We're gonna
planned
try to.
anyway, right?
That's hey,
That's optional.
it's optional. If you
Yeah.
think that you want to float down the river, be faster than the shoreline. That's up to you. But no, it's not required to go down the river.
I sent
Right.
Hunter a video the other day from like one of the rapid sections where it's like a mix of a tube and a raft that you like get on and like go down the rapids. So it keeps you up. I'm like, we need to incorporate that into a race. This is probably not the one to do that.
No,
No.
Are there any rapids in
No.
this race? Okay.
no.
Ginny has a question.
I'd
Yeah.
make a comment, a very, very important comment is foot care. We had not only our team, but many teams had terrible times with trench foot type situations. Like really excruciating trench foot. So lots of changes of socks. I know that we did some sealskin socks at times. Those were helpful. I think Tom and I both did okay on our feet, but one of our teammates did terrible. And we saw other teams that just were in absolute agony over their feet, being wet all the time. So like Tom mentioned about not making the mistake of wearing Gore-Tex shoes because the water won't drain out and you'll just be sitting in this wet, warm water continuously. So a shoe that drains, and bring lots of changes of socks and pay attention to your feet. Dry them out at any opportunity that you can. Take
Yeah,
your
just to touch
shoes
on
off,
something really
socks
quick.
off.
That's the Ben racing strategy, right? Like every couple hours, stop and change your
Yeah.
socks.
I think having a variety of shoes is going to be key for this race. Just like Ginny said, is like we made a mistake in the TV show in bringing waterproof shoes, and that was horrible because all the creeks you cross in Alaska are pretty swollen, so you're always above ankle high. So water just gets in there, and you got to stop every mile and dump out water in your shoes. But I think having a variety of shoes, where like some sections, like the trekking sections, you could wear just trail running shoes, and then more ankle high trail running shoes. But then like the mountaineer and the glacier section, you're going to want to use some waterproof boots or something more heavy duty. If you try to just take trail runners up there, your feet are going to freeze. So I think just having a variety of shoes is going to be key.
What's the weight for their bends, Jeff?
That's a good question.
80 pounds.
I think we're gonna max it out at like 50 pounds. We're gonna give them extra of 10 pounds than C2C, because of the gear. You know, again, this is, this first year is a great learning experience on how to dial this in. The first year that we took over C2C, we were throwing darts and seeing if it would stick, and we learned so much. And now I think the C2C flows perfectly based on what we did the first couple of years. So once we get this dialed in, it's Alaska is a different animal. It is completely different from anywhere else in the world. It's just got, when you talk about foot care, is the most important thing. Every time you step on in Alaska, it's always wet. The ground is wet. You cross creeks, you cross rivers, it could be raining. But the moisture just stays in the forest. So even if it may not be raining that day, it rained a couple days ago, and the flora is always wet. So your feet are always going to be wet, and something you're gonna have to deal with. Hopefully your feet won't be that wet on the bike, but it will as you cross creeks. So foot care is definitely important. Jenny knows that.
Well, question about the devil's claw, because I have never experienced it. Is that something that comes off the trees that you might step on?
No, it's a cactus. Think of it as a cactus.
Okay.
It's Alaska's cactus, and they're
Stringy
everywhere. And you have to get them out of the way to get through to where you're going. And so that's the best way to explain it, because the needles are just like little cactus needles. They poke you, and then you don't know they're there until you start
Rub your
rubbing.
hand against it.
Yeah,
we
leather
need to make
gloves the entire time, period.
I think we need to make a video before the race to like teach people how to bushwhack through Devil's Club, because it took us weeks to figure it out. And it's such a weird bush that you can't grab onto it or puncture you and rip your clothes. It's kind of like you just walk right through it and push it out of the way. Don't try to grab it. Don't try to, oh, I'm falling, grab it. No, just fall into it. But that's like bushwhacking wise, we thought the Devil's Club was the worst thing ever. But salmonberry bushes are way tougher to bushwhack. They're not painful. They don't have needles or anything, but it's like a brick wall trying to push through that stuff. And once the first person goes through, you look back, and the second person, it's like a whole single track path you made, because
I wouldn't even know. I didn't experience that at all.
Exactly.
That's funny. Hunter, I'm seeing a lot of like pre-race videos that you can make, like you've done for C2C, with like how to pack for these and going through gear selection and how to prepare for the terrain that's going to be there and the vegetation. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left. I really want to talk about first of all, are all of you guys have been part of putting this race together, right? Ron, you're racing.
Yeah,
Tom and Jenny.
Ron knows nothing. Yeah.
Okay, Tom and Jenny, you know about the race though, right?
We do, and we help set up the course. Yes.
Okay, so I want you to each talk about like your biggest highlight from the last time and what you think is going to make this as epic as what you went through before.
So the course, it just being in Alaska, just as Jeff and Hunter both described, the views and the epicness of, I guess if that's a word, of the valleys and the mountains. And when you look out at the landscape, it's like just it's very daunting. It's just awe-inspiring. And you look, but then you have to realize, okay, just one foot in front of the other, get you there, and you have to keep moving forward. And Jeff's going to have some additional areas, some other areas to cover that we had not. And just in our hiking, and you had seen some of the pictures and videos of where we were. I mean, all that was just incredible. I want to share one thing that Richard Dove, he was one of our teammates, as Jenny was describing that she was hanging on to these vines and the Devil's Club and whatever, climbing on the side of this hill, and it's the middle of the night, right? And Richard, he says, "Hello, Jenny's mom? No, she's a little tied up right now. Can't come to the phone." We just started rolling laughing. I mean, it really helped the situation because we were all going to die. We knew it, but we made it through. So that was good. But
that's funny,
yeah.
Jenny. What's your biggest highlight, and how do you think that this is going to compare to that?
It will be nice not to have the threat of death. I think that would be a big plus. I did have my one and only life, near-death experience on this race. And so I'm happy that there won't be those same opportunities, because a person doesn't need to go through that.
No.
My favorite part was the Class 5 whitewater, actually. There won't be that in this race, but a second to that was there were some places where you just, especially on the Resurrection Trail, where you come across a lake, and there's like a little cabin, and you can see the mountains reflecting in the lake, and there's nobody anywhere, and there's a little mist floating on the lake, and there's birds, and you're just like awe-inspired by just how amazing it is, and that it's like your own little special Alaska moment, like just you and your team and nobody else. And there was that one particular lake that I found just so beautiful and amazing. So I think you're going to be seeing a lot of those same sort of spots.
Ron, what about you?
There was towards the beginning of the race when everybody headed up onto the glacier. If you watch the video, I took the team, my 8 people, around the glacier. There was a trail that actually went around it, but you had to skip 2 checkpoints. But it went up and it was up above the glacier. So we climbed up on the mountains above the glacier. We got there right. It was a full moon. I don't know if people remember, it was a full moon that night. And as we got above the glacier, we could see down one side, there was this massive valley. That was where our trail was going to go. And if you look to the left, you were up on the mountain and you could see down on the glacier. And technically, I could see the hut that they were rescuing Marco at. We kind of knew that was something going on there because we could see helicopters. But we got there right at the height of the full moon. And that was kind of big. That was the first moment in the race that we just realized this. And there was no taking a picture. You can't take a picture of a full moon landscape with a glacier on one side and a massive valley on the other side. And we're all just standing there, just, whoa, because it didn't even seem real to us. It was just such an epic thing. So that was one of the, but I mean, 5 of my top 10 adventure racing moments probably occurred in the Alaska race. Just and 2 near-death experiences, but that's
That it kind of balances out, right? Like the scales.
it does. It balances out, but none of those were. I mean, it just kind of gets you closer to. It's like, this is really dangerous. I'm thinking we should probably be careful. What do you do?
Well, for those of you that are watching at home, if you have any other questions before we get going, please put them in the comments. We'll try to answer them. Hunter, give us your thoughts about the race coming up. And you've seen some of it. You've raced a lot of races. How are people going to take this?
I think there's beauty in every state or every place you can go race. Even Florida, Florida's flat, and some people think it's boring, but it's so beautiful down there. But something about Alaska is just everything's on another level. Again, just being there, even if you're a backpack team and skip most of the checkpoints and just go from TA to TA, you're still going to have this life-changing experience that everybody's talking about. Like, you don't need to go up and over this crazy glacier and do all this crazy stuff. Let the pros go do that. And you could go from TA to TA and have this amazing experience. And I think that's what I'm most proud of the course design this year is, again, it's not just designed for the elite professional athletes that are going to be getting all the checkpoints. They're going to have a blast getting all those, but you could also have a blast skipping as many as you want, just feeling what's comfortable for you. And again, just being in Alaska is epic enough.
And Jeff, look, this is your baby, right? You've put a lot into this and trying to figure this out with this team. Tell us your thoughts.
I'm excited about getting this first year off and running. Thinking about it since 2019, watching my friends go. So Hunter and I were going to go in 2015, but Hunter was so young that I felt that it would be just too dangerous of a situation. It's the one race that I said no to with Hunter. We went to Wyoming instead, but because I just didn't have enough experience in Alaska to know. But spending 40 days and 40 nights in Alaska, I fell in love with the place. It's absolutely right. We have climbed so many 14ers in Colorado and Wyoming and all over the place and climbed these mountains. No mountain gives you better thrill than to climb a mountain in Alaska. You get to the top, it's a lot harder because one, there's not a lot of trails that go to the top. And if you climb over a glacier or climb through a valley and you bushwhack up through, and then you get to this open area and you're like, oh, look, it looks really easy, but the grass is waist high. And it's bushes. It's not grass. It looks like grass. It looks like it's really easy. You get to the top of that and you look out across Alaska. There's nobody there. It's just so beautiful, so majestic, and it feels like an accomplishment. And I've done a bunch of races where I've left just not 100% feeling like I accomplished anything. Every single checkpoint that everybody goes for in this race is going to be an accomplishment. And that's what I'm most excited about. And the variety of Alaska. We're going to pull off this first year in 2026 when we come back. I have all these other options that we can do. I'm not going to just do all of it in one shot, like ice climbing and whitewater rafting and sea kayaking with whales and stuff like that. All that stuff's in the back burner. I want to pull off this first successful year. We're going to learn. We're going to learn as a staff. You're going to learn as a racer. And we're going to come out of this. This is going to be an epic race a couple of years from now.
Well, I think that's what's fun and going to be fun for me doing dot watching. And if anybody wants to help me get there to do live coverage, I would be more than happy to do this. But I think with the AR dot watching, for those of us that are watching at home, what's going to be really unique about this, because there aren't trails, because there are multiple ways to get places, you're not going to see this line of racers like we do in other races. You're going to see people going this way and going that way. And some might go this way and come back because that doesn't go through. You know, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, and I think it's going to be really exciting. One of the key questions that I think that's being asked is, are the TAs going to be like they expect from a C2C with the food, or are they going to have to pull a hunter and puke their brains out for eating mussels in a can for the first time?
No, all the TAs will be water, Gatorade, snacks, and canned mussels.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm set.
Hunter's like, sign me up. I want to
Yeah.
go back.
PTSD.
No, they will be just like C2C. We're, you know, that's a warrior thing. We want to keep you fed. Giving you warm food during a cold race is just, it's a must. And we're going to be providing all that for you.
Awesome. And look, if you have the same volunteer group that we have at C2C, it's going to be epic. They are infamous at this point, and people don't come to see you, Jeff. They come to see your volunteers that are out here on the courses, because they've become family.
We've had more volunteer requests for Alaska than we had racers, period.
I can imagine.
I have turned down at least 30 people and said, dude, we're at our max. We've got plenty of people. It would be 4 people per racer if we allowed every volunteer to come. And hopefully those will turn into racers next year, or as this race grows, we're going to need more volunteers. But yeah, there's so many people. Alaska is on their bucket list. It should be on your bucket list. You should want to race there. You should want to volunteer there. You should want to come.
Well, it's going to be amazing. I know Adventure One is really looking forward to having the World Cup final there. I know that racers are looking forward to being there. I know I'm looking forward to tracking and following. Thank you guys for being here and kind of sharing your experiences from the past. I hope that it sheds some light on what people can expect. I know we'll have at least one more of these talking about Expedition Alaska prior to the race. Like Jeff said before, we got Omar in next week, and then Chattanooga
Saturday.
Epic in a couple weeks after that.
Yep.
So get in there, sign up, get out there and live the adventure, and we're going to see you on the next one. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
See you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank
See you,
you.
Tom. Good seeing you,
All
buddy.
right. See you, Jeff. Yeah, see you, Hunter. Have a good one.
You
We'll
too.
talk to you later.